everyone, Rebecca Keppel here for Thermoweb today, and I wanted to show you how I created these cards, but specifically I wanted to show you how I created the foiled sentiments using the Thermoweb templates. These templates are plastic templates that have sentiments on them. They have congrats, happy, love, hello, thank you, many different options and many different fonts within each sheet. And so you can use the Thermoweb Decofoil adhesive pen with these templates and create your own foiled sentiments. So if you're like me and your handwriting is not so hot, then these templates come really in handy if you want to have sort of that brush lettering in the foiled effect on your cards or layouts or other paper crafts. So again, I'm going to show you how I created these sentiments, and this time we're going to try the hello sentiment. And then the thing that's great about the foil, once your adhesive is foiled, it does act as a resist. So you can watercolor right over like I did here with the background, and they will be able to wipe away that watercolor and you'll have your beautiful foiling with the beautiful watercolor background. So let's get started. Okay, so now we're going to add our Decofoil sentiment to our panel. I'm going to use the iCraft Decofoil adhesive pen, and I'm going to use my template, and then I'm going to add some foiling on top of that. So first I'm going to try using some anti-static on this card panel. I haven't done this yet, so we'll see if it works, but it does work with embossing ink, so I'm thinking it could work with the adhesive pen as well. And basically I'm just trying to avoid getting little bits of foiling where I don't want it, or little bits of adhesive where I don't want it, which will then result in foiling. So I think I've covered this panel pretty good. And now I'm going to line up my template. So I've cut this panel to slightly larger than this die because I want to cut it out when I'm all done. So I'm going to make sure that when I set my template down, it's somewhere above where I think the die will end up. So I'm thinking right about in the middle here for this hello is pretty good. Let's see if we line it up like that. We should be okay. So the reason that I'm not die cutting it first is because I want to have a larger surface to watercolor on, and then I'll be able to die cut it. So I'm going to uncap my Decofoil adhesive pen, and I'm going to hold down the nib to make sure that the adhesive is flowing through the nib. And once I'm sure of that, it doesn't have to pool or be very, very liquidy, because then you'll get smudgy lines. So once I'm sure of that, I'm going to go over my template really lightly and briefly. Again, you don't want it pooling underneath the template, so a light touch is usually pretty good for this technique. Okay, then I'm going to lift up. And you can't see it, but in real life you can see that there's a shiny part to the cardstock that is where the adhesive is. Now I'm going to try and connect the lines very carefully, just on the open spots of the O and the H and the E. Let's connect that right there. And then I'm just going to give it some time to dry. It doesn't take very long to dry, a minute at the most. You can wave it around a little bit, you can blow on it. But once it's not wet, but it'll still be tacky, then we're going to adhere the foil. So you can see the sentiment just barely there. Once it's dry, I'm going to run it through my die cut machine with the sandwich or settings for a wafer thin metal die. So you could also use a laminator for this part of the card, but just in case you don't have a laminator, I wanted to show you how you can use your manual die cut machine as well. I'm just going to lay my foil right on top of the sentiment, and I'm going to put my top cutting plate above that, and then it's the pressure of the die cut machine that then adheres the foil to the cardstock. Okay, and once I gently remove my foil, you can see I have my foiled sentiment right there ready to go. So next we're going to add our design. To add our stamp design, I'm going to use some Versamark ink and embossing powder, and then I'm going to heat set it. I do think that the anti-static tool helped with not getting little bits of adhesive or foiling on the rest of the card panel. So I'm going to use that again up here for my stamped image. Okay, and once I have all that nice powder on there, I'm going to ink up my stamp with Versamark ink. This is a stamp from Clearly Besotted, and I'm loving using it with watercolors because it's so much fun to color in. Once it's nice and inked up, I'm just going to flip it over and decide how I want this on my card. And press down firmly. And then I'm going to use some Hero Arts white embossing powder. And I don't know if you can tell with the white on white, but using the anti-static tool has really helped keep the embossing powder just where it needs to be. Hasn't stuck anywhere else. So I'm going to transfer my embossing powder back to my jar. Move this to the side. And now I'm going to heat set my stamped image. Once my stamped image is nice and shiny, I am done heating it, and now I just need to let this cool, and then we can start our watercoloring. Okay, so now we have our foiled sentiment. We're ready to create some watercolor on top. The embossed stamped image and the foiled sentiment will act as a resist, so we can watercolor as much as we want on top. So for this card, I'm going to start on this corner. I'm just going to add a little bit of water here just to make it easier to flow across the card. And then I'm going to take my water brush and start adding some color. I think we'll start with yellow. There's already some water on the cardstock, and I am adding a touch more as I go across here. And then I think I'd like some of this pretty teal color. And again, I'm going to start with some water straight on the cardstock and then bring in my teal. Oh, I really like that color a lot. It's okay if we got a little where we didn't want it. We can pick it up later. But I think we'll do a little bit more teal here. And then maybe bring in some of this blue. So you can see it dries really pretty. There's some blending that goes on. I like this sort of line with the bloom, but you don't have to have that where you have that here between the two colors. If you prefer not, that's fine too. Then let's put in some, let's see, maybe some purple. Way too dark though, so let's really get this wet. And we got a splotch purple there, and that's okay. Go back, we can take it off. There we go. Blend it. There's really no mistakes when it comes to watercolors. It's just having fun and adding color. So don't worry about things like blobs or splotches or quote-unquote mistakes, because there just aren't any. So I'm going to go back in and add some to the edges here. Maybe pull in some more water. blend between the colors a little bit. And once I get the background to where I like it, then I'm going to heat set it. It's important to heat set it in between, otherwise you can't add more colors on top because they will bleed. So we'll get it nice and warm. You can see there's some splotches on the letters themselves. I'm going to remove those with a paper towel. And if I move too much color, then we'll be careful to put a little bit back, but I think this is okay. Continue to heat set. Now we're going to put just a touch of that blue back here. And then bring it through with the water here. Okay. Then we'll dab on the letters. There we go. And then we'll heat set. Now that my panel is dry, I'm able to add color back into the flowers and not have it blend or bleed. So I'm going to add some pinks and reds to the large rose. And you'll see normally, obviously, if you blended pink or red with green, you get brown, but because we have heat set the flower, you're not going to get that blending to create a color that you don't want. So I'm just going to drop in some color inside here. And here the stamped lines will act as a resist, so I can pull color off and then keep adding it back on to get beautiful layers just how I want it. I'm going to start with the leaves here, and I realize that I do work better with the water brush, so I'm switching back to that. And again, you can see that I'm adding the green on top, so you're not really seeing the blue underneath, which is really nice. This way, any work I do with the flowers will not bleed with the leaves. And if I wanted to take some color off of the flowers or off of the surrounding areas, all I need to do is add a little bit of water. So if I want to push this back onto the flower, or if I want to take some of the details back from the stamped image, I can do that too, just by using a little bit of water to erase whatever color is ending up on the stamped image itself. And once I'm happy with how the flower looks, how the background looks, maybe I want to add a little bit more color over here just to blend these out a little bit more. But other than that, I think it looks great. So I'm ready to heat set it and then die cut it. So I'm going to center my design inside the die here. And I'm going to use a little piece of washi tape to make sure it stays where I want it. Then I'm going to die cut this, and I have a pretty little foiled and watercolored card panel, and now we can put the card all together. So now I have my two panels and a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 folded note card, and I'm going to adhere everything together using my Therm Memory Tape Runner XL. It's my favorite tape runner. Just going to add some adhesive to the back here, and layer that right over my card. And then I'm going to lay some adhesive on the back of my watercolor panel as well. They tend to warp a little, so I'm going to be sure to use a lot of adhesive there. And then I'm just going to layer this right over top in the center. Make sure I have everything pressed down. And there is my watercolor resist sentiment made with the Therm templates and the iCraft Deco adhesive pen. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want to see more, please subscribe to my channel, and thanks so much for stopping by.